everybody, Blake T. Wilde here, and welcome to Cover Comics, the series on the channel where I go cover to cover on some comics that I enjoy, I want to share with the world. The premise of the show is really to look further in depth into comics and what comics are and the storytelling techniques. Things that aren't just, here's the story, here are the characters that appear. That's it. I want to go into this and look at it from an artist's perspective, from a storytelling perspective, to show the world that comics are more than just cool fights and neat costumes. And I know what you're thinking. I'm not a professional with 20 plus years in the industry. What do I know about any of this? And you're right, I'm not. Yet. Wink. But I do make my own comics, and I have been reading comics for years. I have studied the craft, if you will. And that's why today we're taking a look at how two different artists handle the same characters in this two-part extravaganza. And today we are taking a look at, like I said, this is a very floppy book. It's a reprint from the early 2000s, as you can see by this Family Guy Volume 4. And for whatever reason, when this Spider-Man collectible reprint series was coming out, they decided to split the issues in half. I'd imagine it's just to milk money from the buyers. But let's see how the Lizard fares from in Steve Ditko's world. The Marvel Age of Comics is here. With this original Lizard, I've said it once and I'll say it again. The Lizard is either flat-faced, humanoid reptile man, or just full-on lizard. There's no in-between. So, this issue starts off with the classic way all comics used to, and that is a title page which shows a sort of classic freeze frame almost. It's like the main menu of the, if you want to use a sort of home media. I always love these title pages. I wish that they were still a thing. They're just a lot of fun to see. It's different artwork usually, especially in Jack Kirby issues. It would be something new and fantastical. I love them. Written by Stan Lee. Well, I suppose that is true. He did write the words. Story and drawn by Steve Ditko. So, this begins with the Lizard attacking a bunch of people in the Florida Everglades, claiming the swamp as his own, and we see right off the bat how fucking strong the Lizard is when he rips this giant tree from the earth and says that the Lizard reigns supreme. And this is almost, it's very much an Action Comics almost illusion. I wonder if Steve Ditko had that thought when he was doing this, because it's almost the exact same layout of the Action Comics cover of the three men running away. This guy with his back slightly turned face first into the camera, and the Lizard almost askew lifting the tree over his head. Of course, like wildfire, the reports of human lizard spread throughout the Everglades, the state, and the entire nation. And I just want to say real quick that this spelling of through and throughout, need to bring that back. I use it all the time. People are always confused. And we see just a super clever thing here, which is Spider-Man wants a paper. He doesn't want to go down and, I guess, just ask this guy for it. So while he lowers down like a coin or something and picks the paper up. And he sees the Daily Bugle, which challenges Spider-Man to defeat the Lizard. I wonder what it would have actually said, if that's purely from Ditko himself, or if that was Stan Lee's idea to make just create a little more antagonism between J. Jonah Jameson and Spider-Man. Well, if you're so special, Spider-Man, then why don't you go all the way down to Florida and fight this Lizard Man? And of course, Peter Parker shows up and he's like, hey, I'll go down to Florida if you're serious about that Spider-Man thing. Maybe I can snap some pics. And Jonah tells him to piss off because he just... he freely admits that he just made that headline to sell papers. And he doesn't even believe that there's a giant lizard. He's just like, oh shit, I make tabloids. This sounds great and was gonna sell a lot. And then we get this, which it just... I don't know what the purpose is, aside from just having this relationship back and forth between Peter, Flash, and Liz Allen. He goes to the Natural History Museum to learn about lizards, but he's in the dinosaur exhibit because it was the 60s. And then just so happens that there are these two guys who stole a priceless ruby from the museum. And they think that the security guard comes up, he's like, hey, I saw you, and they take Liz hostage. And so Spider-Man stops them in just a super fun action-y pose by Steve Ditko. I love this, too. This is a really great angle and just pose of Spider-Man, just how contorted he is, and it really illustrates very well the black of the suit. Which, you know, is I feel like an argument that comes up a lot. Like, was the suit supposed to be black? Was it supposed to be blue? I think it was probably meant to be black and red, because blue in comics, especially if there's something that's black, it's used as a highlight color. But as time went on, similar to how the Hulk became green, Spider-Man's suit became blue. Because if we look at this panel right here, like, the majority of his costume is blue. The black is very clearly meant to be Shadow at this time. 6 issues in, the suit is blue. He saves the day, and then he gets invigorated and wants to go and just fuck with Jonah, so he webs him up to the ceiling and tells him that he accepts Jonah's challenge to go and face the lizard in Florida. And you'll notice a lot that Steve Ditko comics adhere very strictly to the grid. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I enjoy it. It helps the story flow very quickly, because at this time, you know, the story, it's got to go very fast. It's not 6 issues leading up to Peter facing the lizard. This is a wholly serialized story of just, it happens, it goes. So Peter goes to Florida, and while he is flying down there with J. Jonah Jameson, who decided to tag along, he reads in the paper about a reptile expert named Dr. Kurt Connors, who resides near the area that the lizard was seen in. I love Steve Ditko's art, the way he illustrated suits, the just fantastic posing and caricature work of just everybody's moving. That's something that you'll notice. I'm going to go this whole page just by this, just to show you what an expert cartoonist Steve Ditko was. Panel 1. Spider-Man is hanging upside down, just sort of chillaxing, hoisting Jonah up by his back somehow. I don't know what he loops the web around to do this. Or, yeah, that must be what he's doing, because that doesn't make sense otherwise. What is Spider-Man holding unless it's, like, hoisted up? Jonah is splayed out, his hands at his sides, he's trying to talk to him. His suit, as we see in the next panel, is askew. It's pulled up in odd angles due to the web. Jonah is moving around via the little motion lines right there. Spider-Man, new position. He's now in this sort of relaxed, almost seated. He's twisted himself even more on this web that he's holding on to. And that prepares him to whisk himself out of the window. Just movement, motion lines, movement. Jonah flails about a little more. He's in a new angle that he was before. He's lifting himself up more because he's at this higher angle, and we're looking down at Betty Brant. He simultaneously has the power in the scene, but also we know that, like, get me down from here! Miss Brant, stop gaping and call Peter Parker! I want to see him here at once! But first, put some soft cushions on the floor under me. Even Betty is like... like, her hand is raising up in disbelief and almost possibly to kind of stifle her laughter at seeing her boss be humiliated. We get this fantastic whoomp as Jonah falls to the floor, telling her the cushions are no longer needed. And at the same time, Peter Parker is putting on his clothes. Then we go to what could be a very boring scene of just 3 different people having 2 conversations. These next 4 panels are purely just chatter. But Steve Ditko, he plays with Peter Parker's security. Like, look at what a suave little guy he is, talking to Betty Brant, his first real relationship eventually. He's suave looking, he has his jacket unbuttoned, he's wearing this black shirt that looks neat on him. I don't know where the white cufflinks are coming from, unless it's just on the suit itself. But, like, he's just positioned in such a almost charismatic, lifelike way as Betty Brant just speaks to him like, oh, where the hell did you come from? And then they start flirting a little bit. Peter wants to ask her out. She is reciprocating, as we see via their body language. They're getting closer in this panel. And then Jonah, interrupting, is literally between both of them. Cut to Peter in Jonah's office. Jonah is, you can tell he's pacing back and forth. He's upset. He's annoyed. He probably still has web on his back that he missed because he couldn't reach and refuses to ask for help. And Peter's just chillaxing, sitting on his Jonah's desk. Like, what an utter way to show how empowered Peter is now that he's Spider-Man, and he's feeling good. He saved the day. He heard what Liz Allen said about how strong Spider-Man's arms are when he saved her. He feels good. He, like I say, he just saved the day and he went straight here. He's high on life, and you can tell that via his posture and his position. Then we get the classic sort of sitcom-esque scenario of, good, we're leaving soon as possible. We're leaving? All of his... everything that Peter had just falls away immediately, and J. Jonah Jameson reclaims the power in this. He kind of looks like John C. McGinley as well in this panel. That's just one page of one issue of Spider-Man that just exhibits what a powerful storyteller, what an incredible cartoonist that Steve Ditko was. If you haven't read his series of Spider-Man or even any of his other comics, I highly recommend you do, especially if you want to learn how to add life to your stories and your books and your comics. Steve Ditko is a huge inspiration on me as a cartoonist, as a creator. I absolutely adore all of his work, and especially on Spider-Man here. Just fantastic posing and ideas and just giving characters life in a wholly unique way to his own. Steve Ditko, a lot of people say, oh, he's so rectangular and it's too angled and it's very stiff. But I feel like what I just showed you argues against that completely. Eventually they get to Florida. Peter's able to sneak away. And we get more this fucking panel. It's just funny to see. We get a little inner monologue from the Lizard, who's very animalistic. Enemy coming. Must hide, then attack. Peter walking through the swamp. And he's attacked by the Lizard as he's investigating, just pulled under the water. He narrowly escapes as the Lizard crawls away. And then we get a fight scene, a really cool fight scene that just shows how powerful the Lizard is. Although, at this time, Peter Parker has, like, fought aliens and stuff, so it's not too out of the realm of possibility, or not that shocking. And narrowly, Spider-Man is able to escape, and then flings him all the way up, where he notices a townhouse a bit away. And he climbs inside to warn this woman that the Lizard is nearby, and that is when she reveals that not only is her husband the Lizard, but he also gave her a autographed headshot of himself that says, "To my wife, love Curtis," which is something that I need to do to my wife. And then we get a flashback here of Kurt Connors as a human. This is the origin of Kurt Connors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 panels to tell the story. He's a scientist. He had one arm. He took a serum to try and get lizard abilities to, you know, how they grow back their tail. He drank it. It worked. But he became the Lizard. That's all you need. Now, moving on to the next half is where things go bad for Dr. Connors. And look at this. How fantastic is that for an expression? But look at this beautiful expression of just shock when Mrs. Connors' son Billy cries out for help because he's outside, and the Lizard comes back to try and see his son. But You know, he's probably not all there, so... And he's also a giant lizard monster, and he's a small child. And also, there's a giant fucking snake out there, too. Another great, illustration of Spider-Man. He's like, what is going on out here? And right here, I love this panel. Because the, Mrs. Connors asked Spider-Man, like, you know, essentially, what are we gonna do? Did you see him? Was that my husband? And Spider-Man just looks so sullen and sad. He's like, oh my god. This is just a scientist like me. I like science. And he's just done this to himself, and based on my very short experiences with it and what his wife has told me, he's becoming more and more animalistic. This is not good. And he's able to work his magic, and he creates a antidote for the lizard serum. They just have to figure out a way to get him to drink it. But unfortunately, the lizard is here, and his brain is all fucked up, and he wants to conquer the world and turn everybody into lizards or whatever. Spider-Man is fucked up by the lizard. He loses this fight. He just flat out gets knocked unconscious. And in that time, Mrs. Connors and Billy, they hide in wherever they go, somewhere else in the house, until the lizard leaves. When Spider-Man wakes up, she informs him that the lizard stole his serum, and that he plans on, like, you know, essentially putting it into the water supply or whatever. He wants to inject, I guess, crocodile or alligators rather, and turn them into the likes of his own. Like, oh well, if this happens when I inject it into a human, what happens if I inject it into an actual creature? Let's find out. And then we get the famous, I feel, one of the famous scenes of Spider-Man making stuff out of his webbing to use, which are Spider-Man, some web swamp shoes. So he just slowly drifts himself through the swamp, and it's a great way. It's silly, obviously, but how else are you going to write into the story that Spider-Man has no webbing, no web fluid anymore? Because he comes across a snake and he freaks out a little bit and sort of reflexively goes to thwip the snake with his web shooters, but it's empty since he's used it all in these web swamp shoes. And here's another example of Steve Ditko exhibiting emotion through Spider-Man's mask. You can tell that he's shocked by this, both by the fact that he's cowering around the corner and just the white of his eye. And down here, the lizard has made some friends. Which, I wonder if he was, like, always supposed to be called the lizard, or if it's supposed to be the alligator, or the alligator man, or crocoman, or crocodile man, crocodilian, crocodilin. Alligator? I don't know. Great movement here. All of these panels really connect. He's leaping to the left, he lands against the wall to the left, and now he's on the right. He's sort of arching his back upward, and he's able to leap off to the right and swing back to the left, and now he's here, which he's down at the bottom of this page on the right-hand side, which leads us to the page turn. Now he's on the right, he leads us. Everything Steve Ditko does is leading the eye through the page, and it's just such a fascinating example to look at, especially because he is limiting himself to this strict grid. That's one thing I really love about Steve Ditko's art, is just how he's able to convey so much movement, so much action, so much story in these squares and rectangles that really don't alter too much from page to page and issue to issue. We get the climactic scene, which is kind of funny, because Spider-Man whips down the lizard's tail, pulls him off the wall, and then just shoves the serum down his fucking gullet. A great pose by Spider-Man, who was in the midst of, like, you know, web crawling and swinging around, and he just gets the wind fucking knocked out of him. Oh, he's rocking back and forth, just hanging there. Right as Dr. Curtis Connors reverts back to human, proto-Animorphs style, and he regains his senses. And Spider-Man really has to point out that he has one arm again. And all the animals, the alligators, they peace out. Because I guess the lizard was controlling them in some way. And they thank Spider-Man for everything he does as he kind of awkwardly stands there in the hallway. That's such a funny little panel of little Spider-Man down there awkwardly waiting as like an awkward third wheel in this conversation between a heartbroken wife and her returned husband. And just they're so happy for everything he did to them. He burns all of his research notes and everything in a fire and is just so heartbroken over what he did and what he's done to his family. And Spider-Man's like, I mean, technically you didn't break any laws, so you're good. He shows up with some photos of the lizard and tells Jonah that he bought him from this guy on the side of the road. He's like, God damn it, those are fake! We wasted all this time! It's all just some sort of publicity stunt, which is probably the works of Spider-Man. And so they fly back to New York. Peter returns. And Peter, the player that he is wants to call Betty Brant to ask her out on a date, but then she's like, oh, well, shit, she has to work late tomorrow. I guess I'll call Liz Allen and ask her on a date. Because he sort of conflates her thoughts with Spider-Man of her thoughts with Peter Parker. And then it's kind of a Silver Age Lois Lane situation. Because she doesn't want to go out with Flash anymore. She's definitely not going out with Peter. She wants to go out with Spider-Man. Especially after Spider-Man gave her a cute nickname called Blue Eyes. Because he is the man of her dreams. And Peter's like, oh, fuck, she thinks Spider-Man has a crush on her? Great. The comic ends with Spider-Man mailing a poem to J. Jonah Jameson, insulting him and making fun of him. And this beautiful... Oh my god, look how cool this is. More comics need to do something like this when they're introducing or reintroducing a villain back into the book in the next issue. This is just a fantastic piece. And that is the origin and first ever appearance of the Lizard. What did you think of this Steve Ditko issue? Have you read all of the original Spider-Man run by Lee and Ditko? If so, what are your thoughts? How do you think Steve Ditko's version of the Lizard compares to Todd McFarlane's version of the Lizard, i.e. the book that I took a look at last week? They're surprisingly similar, although Todd McFarlane's Lizard is a bit more bloodthirsty, whereas this Lizard currently is territorial, I guess, and just mad. Todd McFarlane's is far more animalistic, I'll say. And that might have something to do with, like, Calypso. I think she has something to do with it, I want to say. But I really enjoyed this. I had a blast going through. It's been a while since I've looked through and read the Steve Ditko era of Spider-Man. And it just makes me want to get back to drawing more comics, which is what I'm going to go do right now. I'm currently in the process of inking the remaining 4 issues of The Custodians, Agents of Cross. So check that out at my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey'sVideos, where you have access to issues 1 and 2 of The Custodians, Agents of Cross, a love letter to the Silver Age of comics with modern sensibilities. It's compressed storytelling like this, so each issue is 60 pages and you get 3 stories in total. I'm having a blast working on it. I hope you're having a blast reading it. Let me know what your thoughts were in this comic in the comments below. Follow me on Instagram at @NotBlakeWild, and I will see you next time when I go cover to cover. Bye.